Everyone sang the happy little song, except the shy girl, who still wasn't talking. Nobody gave her a hard time about it. Little Miss Bold never let her out of her sight, really even out of arm's reach, so it was fine. Everyone was out doing perimeter and scouting right now, but we did this song anyway. It gave us all a campy feel and created a routine. Also, since it was dark still, it gave them all a sense of location and courage. If anyone ever came for these kids, we had multiple layers of well-trained, armed people in the woods that would cut them down to shreds. So the songs made them feel secure. Like, there was nothing to be afraid of. They were pretty secure also. There were hidden entrances and exits to the homestead that the patrols could come in and out of. The patrol could show up nearly anywhere unexpected and project far greater organized numbers than we actually had. Nobody knew the schedules either. Not only were we safe from the outside, but no need to worry about hungry kids eating so much food. It threw off our rations if we ever needed to buckle down a bit. And there really wasn't much to be afraid of. We weren't outside of driving radius from the nearest city-state, but we would be for a return trip. There wasn't hardly any fuel left anywhere by now that would be within their operational areas. They know what happened to them the last time they sent a group out this far. They definitely set foot patrols everywhere they could, but we were over 20 miles out from that, so we were at least 35 miles away from the city-state, I'd guessed. Portlandia, the crap hole was called. We estimated that 20 miles was walking distance for a day, and the other side had been doing 5 to 10 mile scouting excursions. That was so they could do 5 to 10 miles out and 5 to 10 miles back. We'd estimated that sooner or later they would be sending out significantly smaller patrols outfitted for overnight, but they would be scouts only. If we ever caught them, it was shoot on sight. So far we hadn't seen any, only guessed as to their eventual existence. We got up to the mess hall and I shuffled to get in front to open the door for everyone. Everyone could smell the pancakes and oatmeal, and it was a big morale booster. I let them all in and they broke ranks and ran towards the food. I assured them that there would be enough food for them all, but they were hungry little monsters. I'd never really tried to guess their age, but figured they ranged between 7 and 11. Anyone younger than that, and they were all in the house, the big house, with mommies in a younger aged education and social system. I got all the ages and really maturity that were able to leave the main house and listen to directions and instructions. Basically, the kids that didn't want to come out did activities in the house all day until they were ready to come out. I had volunteered to be the teacher's aide. It was sort of more like an armed babysitter, but I thought of it more like a camp counselor. We have someone that used to be an actual legitimate teacher, and he still tries to teach, but more often than not, he more suggests what they should be working on. So he just helps put the curriculums together now and teaches when he can. He was retirement age and was getting tired more often with all the hectic stuff going on. I think he was also running low on his meds, unfortunately. Though he didn't want to tell anyone or ask for help. Probably was happy with the state of affairs reverting back to its natural state. Back when people got old, they got to drift away quietly instead of being an astronomical burden on family and system. But he wanted to help as much as he could in the meantime. Send off the next generation proper-like. The kids had been complaining he was drifting off in class and his lessons weren't making much sense. He wasn't a bad guy and wanted what was best for the kids. Really old school though, liked telling a lot of stories and lessons, and the kids seemed to be most receptive to that anyway. Peppered in with a little math so they at least knew the basics. No tests. They made him grumpy, answering tests in the form of full sentences, something nobody did as an adult. I broke my thought process for a second as the kids started to sit down at their tables with their food. I reminded them all to switch seats so they didn't start developing cliques. The last thing we needed was a kid getting isolated and turning into an actual monster. They would still develop a hierarchy, of course. Kids always did. There were no participation trophies anymore, only success or failure. They succeeded or failed as a team. They all had a place, and the best ideas floated to the top. All I did was help them critically think through what they were doing. I stood up and nibbled on my food with plate in hand. I was going to go check on the cook, but remember, they didn't like to talk much. I remember how we figured out the education program. The teacher that we had sat down with me and we ironed out a bare-bones education program. We tried to think about what they absolutely needed. History got completely rearranged to cut out 80% of what was taught in schools. We started with Native American wars, then the Revolutionary Wars, then the war with Mexico, then the war between the states. We focused on what really happened instead of so many years of indoctrination. I had a heck of a time chasing all these books down. More than a few people thought it was a waste of time doing looting runs in schools, but it paid off eventually. Within a few weeks, we had history books for each event. We taught math without books, only taught the basics: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. We'd played around with teaching geometry and statistics, but by the time the younger ones were old enough to even understand what that was, they were basically fighting age. When it came time to build things, they learned all the geometry they needed, so that worked out well. They learned statistics on the fly through normal conversation with everyone. The rest of the arithmetic was basically gone. I grabbed one of each book from algebra to calculus and trig, but it was only for the library. My head hurt just thinking about those subjects. Maybe someone would want to learn those topics someday, and that way they would have the opportunity. I snapped out of my thoughts again and realized the kids were all just about done eating and starting to get restless. It was time to clean up, and then calisthenics. Everyone, we ready for cleanup? The kids all repeated, cleanup. I saw the last of the kids finishing their last few bites and taking their last sips of their juice. All right, clean up then. Another song started. Clean up, everybody everywhere. Clean up, everybody do your share. I admitted to myself that song sounded kind of calmy, but it would take all of us to keep the place clean. They all scraped their plates into a compost bucket and carefully put their plates in a bin, stacked up properly. They did the same with their cups. Their utensils all got set in a third bin. Good job, everyone. Now it's time to go get stretched out. Needed to burn a bunch of this energy off before I could get much into their brains. Started with stretches first so they didn't hurt themselves. That was also so their stomachs didn't get upset. Everyone got back in a line, and I let them out of the tent and counted again. Still 13. The sun had completely come up, and it was going to be overcast as usual. The days were getting slightly longer and slightly warmer. We headed to the playground. Little Miss Brave in the lead, her shy sister behind, and the rest. Another song broke out. Where will we be? Where will we be? When you need us? When you need us. We'll be at the playground. We'll be at the playground. That's where you'll find us. That's where you'll find us. We thought about trying to keep the kids quiet, like as if it somehow wouldn't attract people if they were quiet. Reality was, though, that the patrols kept everyone plenty far away, and the forest rapidly sprouting up dampened the sound a lot. Keeping the noise down, the numbers down. Whether we had guns, kids, females, it wasn't a high priority. People were going to find out regardless, and we were going to train regardless, and we didn't keep prisoners. All the other townships had similar rules, and there hadn't been any breaches or leaks. So it was pretty good, and an agreed upon system. Chapter 4, Playground. Morning. We made it to the playground, and they all stopped before playing. They knew they had to do their stretches first. I asked one of the more athletic kids if he wanted to lead the stretches, and he did. We stretched our legs and our arms, and I stretched out with them. We didn't sit down in the grass or anything because it was wet. All the kids had rubber boots, just like I did as a kid. All the kids were appropriately dressed for the weather, and nobody cared what style everyone else had. I gave them all jobs, tasks, and responsibilities, so they weren't in permanent super competitive mode. There would be some of that anyway, but oh well. It was calisthenics time, so I had someone else lead. I chose one of the kiddos that was a little slower, so we didn't get so fast that they couldn't keep up. We did some jumping jacks, and I kept him encouraged so he'd know I wasn't picking on him. Did a few push-ups, and they didn't get too wet. We kept the grass here short with push mowers. They did their mountain climbers, then they all jumped up ready to go. How's everyone feel? I asked. They all said back, amazing, except for Quiet Girl. She was smiling at least, and I nodded. Is everyone ready to clear the base? They all shouted back at me, yeah! Alright, stack up, let's do this. We had a play structure for them that was set up as a bunker, play fort sort of thing. They spent several times playing in it every day, making up games and stories. It had swings and ladders and everything kids could want, but it was also a functional defensive location with multiple loopholes and a little attic in the whole 9 yards. There was even a proper American flag on the mast at the center of the base. Alright, let me check it out. First, y'all get ready and come up with a plan.